Hi there, smart drivers. Social driving. It is one of the reasons that you will fail your driver's test, and as well, social driving is the reason for most traffic crashes. We'll talk more about that, give you the definition of social driving and strategies you can put in place to make yourself a safer, smarter driver. Talking about the problem that you are facing out on the roadway. And we've talked about this in terms of large metropolitan cities and how crazy people are, how aggressive they are, that they will honk at you if they think that you are in their way, because everybody agrees with the statement, I am a good driver. Very few people would not agree with that statement if they have a driver's license. Most people believe that they are good drivers, right? And you are in their way. And if you don't get out of their way, they're going to honk, they're going to follow too close, they're going to tailgate and tell you in no uncertain terms, because the other characteristic of social driving is policing other people on the roadway and telling them that they're number one, telling them that they're in your way, or telling that you're doing something wrong. For example, they had one of the roadways closed here for a long time in the suburb where I live. And you had to kind of go up through the back way. And, you know, I didn't think there was any traffic around, and I kind of nipped up, and there was this place where you couldn't make a left-hand turn. And I went to make a left-hand turn. A car showed up out of nowhere. So I had to wait to turn left. And this car gets behind me and he's just like laying on the horn telling me that I can't turn, right? That's part of social driving, of policing other drivers and telling them that they're doing something wrong. Great videos to have a look at, 5 defensive driving skills and defensive driving skills for new drivers who are just getting their license and getting on the road and getting going. Social driving is the one thing that unites us as a human race, regardless of religion, creed, politics, LGBTQ and all that stuff. Everybody who drives will agree with the statement, I am a good driver, and which is interesting that most people would agree with that statement, even though that there is a very low watermark in terms of getting a driver's license. You simply have to write a test, and then you take a on-road driving test, which lasts about 20 minutes in most places, and you drive around. The examiner gives you a driver's license, and you are not required to ever be tested again. Some places in the United States, if you get a traffic ticket, you have to go to driving school, defensive driving and those types of things. And some of the defensive driving courses that you need to take in California, for example, are kind of funny. Some of them are comedy. They all have a theme, and you take this and you carry on with your life and get your license. Speed cameras, for example, they tout that these are about safety. When there aren't any points associated with that, it doesn't affect your insurance. It's simply a monetary fine. So I'm not sure how that is affecting safety on our roadways or causing any kind of reform, but we can talk more about that after the presentation. Reactionary. People are retaliatory and reactionary within the realm of social driving. They're following too close, they're speeding, they're hoping on a wing and a prayer that they're going to be able to avoid a crash with another vehicle on the roadway because they're following too close, and as well they're stopping too close in traffic. And when they stop in traffic, they just kind of hit it and quit it, and they stop and they don't think about anything. They're not observing, they're not monitoring traffic coming up behind. And the number of people that have said to me over the years, I was just sitting still in traffic, I wasn't doing anything, and I got rear-ended. Yes, you did get rear-ended because you didn't have situational awareness about what was going on, and you didn't put in place the skills and strategies that can protect you in the event of an imminent rear-end crash, which is having space in front so you can move up, flash your brake lights, or drive around the vehicle in front and avoid being rear-ended. Traveling too close to vulnerable road users, and this is something that is never taught correctly to new drivers. And new drivers, I get them in the vehicle and they will drive very close to a cyclist, a pedestrian, or other vulnerable road user, which will make me incredibly uncomfortable. The butt cheeks kind of tense up and you're like, oh my God, and you're kind of reaching for the steering wheel to try and avoid striking a vulnerable road user. And on that note, if you look at vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, motorcycle riders, globally, vulnerable road users make up 50% of traffic deaths. In high-income countries in the world, the United States of America, Canada, Australia, Europe, vulnerable road users make up almost 1/4 of traffic deaths. So give lots of room between your vehicle and vulnerable road users. Picture of the Titanic. What does that have to do with driving? What does that have to do with social driving and the problems of traffic crashes? Get-There-Itis. We need to get from point A to point B as quickly as humanly possible without getting a traffic ticket. And most people will compromise safety to do that. And it was back to what I was talking about in the introduction of the 3 cars that ran a red light in one cycle of the traffic light yesterday. So you think in a 24-hour period, how many people are running traffic lights, despite the fact that we have safety buffers built into these traffic lights. From the time that one traffic light turns red to the time that the other light turns green, there's a 2-second safety window in there. It's a buffer to prevent people running the red light and getting T-boned in the intersection. So Get-There-Itis. The Titanic, which sank on the 14th of April 1912, the most famous disaster in human history, which everybody knows about, not just because of the James Cameron movie, but also because of the fact that it was just unthinkable that on its maiden voyage, one of the fastest ships in one of the, during the Industrial Revolution sank and killed over 1,000 people. The reason it did is because the captain and ship captains between Southampton, England and New York City were under pressure to make the crossing as quickly as possible. And this also affects airlines. This is where I got this concept from. Get-There-Itis, getting there as fast as quickly as possible, putting your nose in, sticking your nose in and completing the mission. Airline pilots, crashes have happened because of the same thing, that they're going to beat the storm. And they're going to get there, they're going to finish the job, they're going to move the airplane from point A to point B and complete the service. Unfortunately, people have died because of this very concept and characteristic of social driving. Running red lights, speeding, aggressive driving, following too close. This is all part and parcel of Get-There-Itis. And in terms of traffic and in terms of personal driving, it's probably the same that your dad and 4 kids in the car driving to Uncle Pete's house, and we made it there. It's 7 hours and 40 minutes, but we made it there in 7 hours and 30 minutes. All the kids peed in a bottle, we ate out of a cooler, we didn't stop except for fuel. We made it in 7 hours and 30 minutes. That is Get-There-Itis. Nose to tail, communication. We've talked about this in terms of people not signaling when they're merging. I don't know whether it's worse that they don't signal when they're merging, or it's the fact that you get the little courtesy flash. The one flash as they're halfway across, already into the other lane. Nose to tail. This is one of the theories about why traffic is so poorly organized and that communication and observation doesn't happen. Because we're looking at the back end of the car in front of us. Think of it like standing in a grocery store line. We're looking at the backside of the person in front of us, and it is rare that we engage in conversation with the person in front of us. And normally, nose to tail, when we're standing in a grocery store line, we can be standing 6 inches behind the person in front of us, this far, and we won't talk to them. If somebody was standing face to face with us 6 inches in front of us from our face, we would say, I'm a little uncomfortable, you're in my personal space. But when we're face to their backside, in the same as cars are nose to tail, we are more comfortable with tailgating and being too close. And this could be one of the very problems that we have with social driving and with traffic. When traffic slows, the vehicles get even closer together. And this is another signpost in terms of defensive driving. It's not just brake lights that indicate that traffic is slowing down, but the spaces between the vehicles get closer together. In other words, the vehicles bunch up when traffic is slowing down. And this is how we get phantom traffic jams on interstates and freeways. The lead car slows down and brakes, the next car brakes a little bit harder, the next car brakes a little bit harder, and by the time you get to the 60th or 70th car, now the entire interstate is at a complete standstill, and you get these phantom traffic jams because people are following too close. And then, in addition to that, if you drive the 401 highway between Detroit and the border at Quebec, which runs east to west across southwestern Ontario, it's the busiest commercial highway in North America. And you get those trucks out there, they're all governed at 100 kilometers an hour, 62 miles an hour. One of them pulls out into the hammer lane to try and pass another truck that's governed at 100 kilometers an hour, 62 miles an hour. And you got half a mile difference in the two trucks. They're just holding up traffic behind them. It should be like it is in Europe. All the trucks in Europe are governed at 55 miles an hour, 90 kilometers an hour. They stay in the right-hand lane. They're not allowed out in the left-hand lane to pass. So this is something that we may be considering in North America as they're bringing in more and more mandatory speed limits for big truck. Okay, too close in queues, getting rear-ended, managing space in front. There's tons of space in front and there's tons of space behind. And I talked about this driver, one driver that left a comment a few weeks ago, and I still haven't got back to this comment, but I keep thinking about it, keeps rolling around in my head, that they were saying that if you keep space in front, you have that 3 to 4 second following distance for maximum defensive driving and defensive posturing, and stopping back in traffic one vehicle length, that you're holding up the traffic behind you. You're being completely arrogant, you're being completely self-centered, and you're impacting the people behind you. And I'm still trying to figure out how that happens, that we're being inconsiderate to other traffic on the roadway. Front to back, if you think about this in terms of driving, there is so much space on the roadways, but yet we insist on driving in packs on the roadway when we drive. And this is part and parcel of social driving. And if you want to reduce your chances of being involved in a crash, particularly on interstates and particularly out on highways, you want to stay out of the clusters. If you can drive in the spaces between the clusters of vehicles on the highways and the freeways, you're going to be significantly safer on the roadways. Drivers fail to communicate. We talked about this in terms of merging, that people don't signal when they're turning. You get a little courtesy flash maybe now and again, but sometimes I think that it would just be better if they didn't signal at all. Unpredictable actions. Many people do things that are unpredictable on the roadway, and this leads to car crashes. Running red lights, for example. This puts you at a very high risk of being involved in a crash. The other piece about running red lights, 40%, more than 40% of crashes happen at intersections. Intersections are dangerous. They have a lot of activity going on there. In addition to that, it's also the place that you are most likely to encounter vulnerable road users. 25% of vulnerable road users in North America make up traffic fatalities. So there is a lot more traffic at an intersection. Not to mention you got slip lanes, left turning lanes, right slip lanes, traffic lights, advanced greens, pedestrian, cyclists. You got a lot of activity going on at intersections, and this contributes to the unpredictable actions of other traffic and other road users. Reactionary and retaliatory, I talked about this in the introduction to the presentation, that people driving within the realm of social driving and participating in social driving are reactionary and retaliatory. They're hoping on a wing and a prayer they're going to get their vehicle stopped fast enough if something crazy happens in the driving environment. And I know for a fact that it does every now and again for me, that I get distracted by something and I'm not paying attention. All of a sudden I'm laying on the brakes trying to get it stopped in time. But most people are simply following too close, and somebody does something crazy, or they get distracted, or they're slightly not paying attention, and then all of a sudden they're hoping on a wing and a prayer that they get their vehicle stopped. Drivers police other road users, they criticize them, and to express their dissatisfaction of what other drivers are doing on the roadway by holding them up, they crowd them, they honk, they give them the finger, tell them they're number one, and they engage in road rage. And next week we're going to talk about road rage, and we're going to talk about how to deal with that on our roadways and mitigate that so that it doesn't escalate and you don't end up with somebody getting out of a vehicle and pulling a weapon on you. Okay, right of way. These are the top 3 reasons for car crashes: following too close, failing to give the right of way, and mismanagement of speed and space. These are the top 3 reasons for crashes, and following too close and not having situational awareness is the number 1 reason why you will be involved in a traffic crash. So have space. That way you have minimum safe distance between your vehicle and other vehicles on the roadway. Space buys you time. Time buys you options. Options prevent crashes, because other people are going to do goofy things on the roadway. Other people are going to engage in unpredictable actions. Going out and driving and expecting other people not to do goofy things on the roadway is like going to watch your favorite sports team and expecting the other team not to score. It's simply not a reality of driving. Goofy things are going to happen. Unexpected things are going to happen. Traffic is dynamic. It's always changing. And you need to have situational awareness. You need to know what you're doing, where you're going, and who's around you and who is following you to prevent yourself being involved in a crash. Right of way. The right of way is always given. It is never taken. And sometimes to prevent a crash in terms of right of way, somebody pulls out in front of you or insists on going first. It's just a matter of letting off the throttle and letting them go and have their crash somewhere else. Mismanagement of speed and space. You're traveling too fast. You're following too close. You misread the traffic situation. You're going to have something unpredictable happen on the roadways. Good luck on your driver's test, and remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Shoulder checking for the back left and back windows. No, Nelmic, it is not for the back windows. It is simply 90 degrees. 90 degrees in the direction that you're moving the vehicle. Talking today about social driving, we're talking about Get-There-Itis. The need and hurry up to get there as quickly as humanly possible. And we'll talk about that is not just a problem of social driving and traffic, it is also a problem of any form of transportation. Retired, I see more people looking at their phones when driving on the highway. Retired, it's just going to become a bigger and bigger problem. And the other issue with modern vehicles is telematics. It's that huge screen in the middle of the console that is problematic as well. So people are on their phones, they're on the telematics, they're messing around with them. When we rented the car in Australia there 2 years ago, the huge telematics screen that was completely confusing and difficult to read while you're going down the road, I simply put my son in charge of finding radio stations and being responsible for anything that was come across on the telematics screen in the middle of the car. Speedometers, yes, digital speedometers. I mean, why do we need 6 versions of the instrument panel in the vehicle? The car rented in Spain, I think it had 6 different versions of, whatever you wanted. Not to mention it had part of the navigation, the GPS in the middle of the tachometer and the speedometer, which I found completely distracting when I was driving. So it's crazy. Marion, I'm having anxiety issues with aggressive drivers lately, even honking at me because I yielded to a vehicle already in the traffic circle. Marion, just let them go and have their crash somewhere else. Take a breath. Go and have your crash somewhere else. They're out there. And it was interesting because I don't know whether you saw the Instagram post I put up yesterday, put up this morning. I put it up this morning. Sitting at the traffic light with the dash cam running, and so there's 2 cars in front of me in the left turning lane. We're turning left. 2 cars in front of me. The first car goes, the second car follows through, and the light had already been red for a full second by the time the second car went through in the intersection. Then my light goes red. So I stopped, I waited for a full cycle, and then the other car comes through the intersection and their light had been red for a solid 2 seconds before the other car got into the intersection. So in a matter of 1 cycle of the traffic lights, 2 cars had run the red light, making left-hand turns at a fairly busy intersection here in Vernon. And I was just like, wow, people are like really in a hurry to get to where they need to go, which, is crazy. Lackadaisical, there's also crazy drivers, people who lash out randomly or honk when nothing happens. Yes, those people are there all the time, and that is part and parcel of social driving, is people getting angry, people getting upset, people honking, telling you you're in their way because, they need to get to where they're going as quickly as humanly possible. And that is the very definition of Get-There-Itis. 85, do you notice more crazy drivers when it's raining or snowing? 85, actually, I notice less crazy drivers when it's raining or snowing. It's a risk perception thing, that when it's raining or snowing, people actually have a perception of risk associated with driving. Whereas if it's nice and sunny, dry roads, clear visibility, that's when most traffic crashes happen. That's when most people are aggressive when they're driving. Yeah, it's not raining or snowing or inclement weather that people tend to be crazy. And unfortunately, winter driving, people are more terrified of driving on ice and snow than they are of driving tornadoes, hurricanes, or there's another one, forest fires. They're more terrified of driving on ice and snow than they are those 3 other conditions. And in addition to that, the US states that have winter have the lowest number of crashes during the year, as opposed to those states that don't have winter. Arizona, Alabama, the Carolinas, these have the highest crash rates in the United States. It's an interesting statistic, and it's a perception that is incorrect amongst most people who are driving. The other thing about the wintertime is there's fewer vulnerable road users out on the roadway. There's less pedestrians, there's fewer people on bicycles, there's fewer scooters, skateboards, and people with mobility devices and those types of things in the wintertime. So there's less traffic in the wintertime as opposed to the summertime. Thoughts on DoorDash and motorcycle weaving from lane to lane? That's just part of people, Get-There-Itis. DoorDash and motorcycles making deliveries. Again, this is part and parcel of Get-There-Itis. We have to deliver it as quickly as humanly possible so that when it gets there, the food is still hot, the food is still cold, or whatever, right? So that is part and parcel of Get-There-Itis, delivering the service, delivering the product as quickly as humanly possible. So they're going to do all those crazy things. And this isn't new. I mean, bike messengers prior to electric vehicles, electric scooters and electric bicycles and skateboards and those types of things, they did all kinds of crazy things, weaving in and out of traffic, up over sidewalks and into alleyways and those types of things at full speed. Now, Mick, I think those crazy drivers have personal stuff going on and randomly lash out and honk when traffic is normal. I don't know, some people are randomly angry. I think that being in their second most personal space next to their house, people act out, they lash out, they are aggressive. I know that when I was driving truck in the years before I started taking all this driving instruction and training and whatnot, that I was prone to losing my temper. And it was when I got a bit older and started taking some of these training courses and realizing the impact of a traffic crash on people's personal lives, then I started to kind of relax and those types of things. However, saying that, and I've talked about this before, that when I'm walking, I'm a pedestrian, or I'm cycling, my road rage gauge goes 0 to 120 in like a nanosecond if somebody in a car crowds me at a crosswalk, or I'm on my bicycle and somebody honks at me or crowds me on a roadway. My road rage meter just goes, whoa! I just lose it. But if I'm in my car, I'm all good. Social driving. The reason that we're talking about social driving and talking about the traits and characteristics of social driving, if you engage in the way that other people drive and you are preparing for a driver's test, you are not going to be successful on your driver's test. First and foremost, you cannot speed on a driver's test. You must drive the posted speed limit. And I had a driving instructor tell me yesterday that he or she teaches their students to drive a little bit below the posted speed limit. I don't recommend that. I recommend that on a driver's test, drive the speed limit. If it's 50 kilometers an hour or 30 miles an hour, drive that speed limit. Don't drive a little bit under, drive at that speed limit. This day and age, it's very easy to keep a constant speed in a vehicle. Not to mention, your speed works in tandem with your observation, because you're looking far down the road, you're looking in, checking your instrument panel far down the road, checking your center mirror far down the road, checking your side mirror far down the road, checking your other side mirror. So every 10 to 15 seconds, you should be looking at your instrument panel as part of your forward scanning pattern to keep yourself safe. So if you're not adjusting your speed every 15 to 20 seconds when you're driving, it's telling the driving examiner, the tester, that you are not scanning properly, because as part of that forward scanning pattern, you're checking your instrument panel as part of that forward scanning pattern. So know that when you're taking your driver's test, that your forward scanning pattern is tied into speed control. Okay? If you're controlling your speed, it's telling the tester, the examiner, that you are observing correctly when you're driving in a forward motion. Situational awareness. Where am I? What kind of traffic am I in? Where are the vehicles that are around me? Is there a semi-truck? Is it going to go slow going up a hill? Do I need to get out into the other lane? Those are the questions that you need to be asking yourself when you're driving. And when you first start driving, you first start learning how to drive, there is a lot going on and things are changing very quickly. For example, if you're living in Vancouver where Marion lives, you can get up in the morning out in your little suburb, right? Very quickly you be out onto a multi-lane roadway with all kinds of traffic, semi-trucks and those types of things. And then you're down by the river in the industrial area and you've got these huge semi-trucks hammering up and down there, and there's just scores and scores of them, and you're trying to get out in the left lane and trying to pass and keep up with everybody else and the rest of rush hour traffic in the morning. So know that in terms of situational awareness when you're driving. Social driving. Resist the urge to participate in social driving. Don't drive the way that everybody else drives. If A, you want to pass the driver's test, and B, you want to be a safer, smarter driver. If you're participating in social driving, you're not going to be a safer driver. You're simply dangerous like other people on the roadways. Thanks so much for watching. All the best. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. Bye now.